أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Continuing on our step-by-step guide on this Umrah, we have now completed all the preliminary discussions with regards to Ihram, and we would like to start discussing about the first ritual of our Umrah, which is Ihram. Before I start the video, there is one just word of caution that I'd like to mention, particularly to parents who might be a bit more conscious. From this video onwards, there will be language used which is of sexual nature. And that's because in our religion, la haya'a fid din, there is no embarrassment in speaking openly in our religion. But I have to use these kind of words because these are the words that are stated in the books of fiqh, in the jurisprudence books, and they relate to matters that could break the ihram and could cause issues for us. So if you are conscious about your children not having to hear these words, and you might want to translate the videos back to them in your own words, then please do so. But there is no other way for me except to use these words in the videos from this video onwards, inshallah. So with that in mind, let's kick off. Ihram. Ihram is the first ritual of Umrah Mufrada. Remember, we said there are 7 rituals of this Umrah Mufrada. First being Ihram. Ihram in itself has 3 conditions. The first one is niyyah, intention, and that's what this video is about. The next is talbiyah, the call to enter the Ihram, and then wearing the garment, the white garment for the men, and what the women should be wearing on the inshallah in subsequent videos. So for this video, niyyah. So niyyah does not have to be, so the intention does not have to be uttered loudly for it to be accurate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. If I'm standing up for Salatul Dhuhr, for example, I don't have to start giving my GPS location and my address and my full name and whether the Salah is 4 rak'at and it's wajib qurbatan ila Allah. Allah knows why I'm standing here on my musalla. So for the niyyah to be valid, it does not have to be uttered loudly. The exception being pilgrimage. In pilgrimage, it is recommended to utter the niyyah loudly. So let's quickly just go through some conditions of niyyah. The niyyah has to be uttered in terms of the niyyah has to be specific with regards to what type of pilgrimage we are doing. So the pilgrimage must make up his mind to perform what's obligatory on him by the way of Umrah and Hajj to attain proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first condition for the niyyah to be valid is that it needs to be to seek nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It needs to be qurbatan ilallah. And I think we did one of the first videos was about intention and how every act of worship has to be to seek proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first condition for niyyah has to be for seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second condition for niyyah has to be done at miqat, and except in exceptional circumstances, which we mentioned in the previous videos. The ihram has to be specified. So I am doing this, I am wearing this ihram for Umrah Mufrada qurbatan ilallah. And I'll come to niyyah in a second, how we can word it in a second. However, if one is worded for somebody else, again we'll come to that in a second. If somebody is doing it for a vow, not Hajjatul Islam doesn't apply to us. If the niyyah is established without determining the type of pilgrimage, then the ihram will be invalid. This is really, really important for all of us here, inshallah. Let me just highlight it, that it is really, really important to determine what type of pilgrimage we are doing so that the niyyah is not invalid. So, quickly reiterating, it needs to be qurbatan ilallah, it needs to be done at miqat, and number 3, we need to specify what type of pilgrimage we are wearing the ihram or doing this niyyah for. So only really two rules in the book of Atlas Sistani with regards to niyyah. First one we talked about, that it does not have to be uttered loudly for it to be valid. However, in cases of pilgrimage, it is recommended to utter the niyyah loudly. This is an interesting one. It is not a requirement for the validity of the ihram that you should be determined to stay away from all the prohibitions, except for one thing, and this is where I made the warning at the beginning. If somebody is intent on from the outset of Umrah Mufrada on having sexual relationship with his spouse before completing the sa'i, then the ihram has been void. And the same applies for masturbation. If somebody is intent, so we are in Masjid al-Shajara, we're about to wear the ihram, and we're about to do the talbiyah, and we're about to begin our ihram and begin our umrah rituals. If at that moment in time somebody has already made an intention that on reaching Makkah, I'm going to have a relationship with my spouse. Let's say, for example, we reach Makkah, your rooms are allocated to you, and you decide to go back to your rooms rather than go to the haram and complete your rituals. You decide to go back to your rooms and you decide to commit the act. If somebody has made that intention from the word go, then that ihram is invalid, and then we have a problem. We have to repeat things, we have to fix things, there's kafaras to be paid, and inshallah, for the sake of once we reach Makkah, it's only, the whole thing should be just a couple of hours inshallah at most. There is an exception that if somebody was not intent on doing these things, but then once he reached Makkah, he couldn't control himself and decided to do these things anyways, then the ihram is not valid, is not invalid. However, there are penalties to be paid. So inshallah, this completes the video for niyyah. Now, recommendation is we write down the intention on a piece of paper. Especially if you remember in our initial videos, Umrah Mufrada can be done in once every lunar month for a particular person. So if I'm doing Umrah on behalf of myself, I can only complete one Umrah Mufrada in a lunar month. In the whole month of Sha'ban, I can only do one Umrah Mufrada. If I want to do a second Umrah, it would have to be done on behalf of somebody else. Now, the jurisprudence or the jurists allow us to include many different people in one Umrah. So for example, I could do the Umrah on behalf of myself, my father, my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, Rasulullah, Amirul Mu'mineen, all our Imams, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, all in one niyyah. And for that, it is important to write down exactly on behalf of whom I'm doing the Umrah. Why? Because every act following, we have to re-utter or re-establish the intention. But if we forget one name, so for example, I started off, I'm wearing the ihram for Umrah Mufrada on behalf of myself and my father, qurbatan ilallah. When I reached Makkah, I'm now beginning my tawaf. I remember, actually I want to include my mum in this as well. We have to go repeat all the other things for my mum to be included in that niyyah, if that makes sense. So if we write down the niyyah and list down the names of the people whom we will be doing each and every ritual on behalf of, then inshallah there is no space for any issues inshallah with regards to that. Now I'd invite you to send any questions related particularly to ihram and particularly to the first part of ihram, which is niyyah inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.